Hello everyone, and welcome back to the final installment of this year's Freak Show at the Geek Show Fright Festival of Fear Electric Boogaloo SmackDown vs. Raw Incorporated Scary Movie Review series. I'm finishing things off with the threequel to a long-dead slasher franchise that already suffered through a critically panned reboot attempt in order to let you know that you're missing out if you've never seen A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. I know what you're probably thinking. Okay, ew. I don't want to watch the third Nightmare on Elm Street. I get it. Freddy isn't even as hot as Scary Terry. Wrong, wrong, wrong! Please, allow me to educate you in this final installment of this true hidden horror gem. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was released in the winter of 1987. It was directed by Chuck Russell with several screenwriters, most notably Wes Craven. For those who don't know, Wes Craven directed and wrote the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie, but he didn't return for A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. He didn't want to sign on for that film as it was a fucking weird mess. Although he did offer some advice to the filmmakers, he was barely involved and wasn't credited for the story on that movie. So although Nightmare on Elm Street 3 isn't directed by Craven, he created the story and the movie clearly reflects his involvement. Whereas Nightmare on Elm Street 2 went off in a very strange direction, one I kind of respect in an odd way. Dream Warriors feels more like a sequel to the original. It brings back some of the original characters and shows the progression of their story. Naturally, we have Robert Englund returning as Freddy Kreuger, but also we have Heather Langenkamp returning as Nancy Thompson, the lead of the original film who was absent from Part 2. You'll notice actually that throughout the franchise, Nancy Thompson only appears in the 3 movies that Wes Craven wrote the story for. Even in the 2010 reboot, which Craven was not involved in, they had their own main girl character named Nancy, who for whatever reason had a last name changed to Holbrook. Why? I don't know, and I don't give a fuck enough to research because that movie bad. I point all that out to reiterate my point that this movie could be said to be the actual spiritual sequel to the original and the conclusion of the story, despite the franchise spinning off and continuing. So let's see how this sequel stacks up. Does Craven deliver, or is this movie a carbon copy of the original like so many slasher movie sequels tend to be? I've teased this out long enough. This movie fucking rips. It's such a good sequel. It's so fun, the effects work is incredible, and it's still got that creepy factor. There are a few things that don't quite work for me, but we'll get to those after I gush a little. Full disclosure, I think Nightmare on Elm Street as a franchise is some of the most engaging sequels because they all try totally new things. The original is obviously iconic. Part 2 tries something different, it didn't necessarily pan out, but I respect the guts it took not to make a retread, and that goes for Part 3 as well. Frankly, this movie shouldn't even be called The Nightmare on Elm Street because it totally flips the setting on its head. It removes the franchise from its suburban roots and keeps its characters confined to the psychiatric hospital where all the teenage patients are suffering from suicidal thoughts due to the horrible nightmares that they keep having. Freddy's back. So this still maintains similar elements from the original movie, teenagers having horrible dreams and authority figures not believing them, but it's turned up a little more since they are locked up in a hospital, unable to escape, and at times forced into solitary confinement or drugged into going to sleep. That simple change to the setting helps to differentiate this movie from the original, but there are a few more changes that really make it unique. This movie takes place 6 years after the original, and Nancy isn't introduced until little into the movie. I haven't seen this film since I was a teenager, so I was legitimately surprised when she showed up as a graduate student/intern at the hospital who immediately knows what's going on with these kids. So we have the kids struggling against Freddy, but now we also have an adult who believes them and is trying to help due to her own history. Now, she isn't much higher up on the totem pole than the kids, but she's at least able to eventually influence one of the doctors into believing her and the kids. The other really big change, and this is actually a big change for the entire franchise, is the dream powers. Just looking at the titles for Part 3, Part 4, and Part 5, you can see there was a shift in the franchise that begun with this movie. Dream Warriors, Dream Master, the Dream Child. It's discovered that these kids have special powers in their dreams. Not really explained why, kind of glossed over, but you just have to accept it. And these powers can be used to help fight Freddy in their dreams. Although, honestly, that concept is barely utilized in this movie at all. Allow me to list some of the powers for you. The first character we are introduced to, Kristen, is able to bring people into her dreams. That's how they can all end up together. That's cool and serves the plot, but also in her dreams, her power is that she's just acrobatic. Then there's Kincaid, who becomes strong. Taryn becomes a punk-looking chick with 2 pocket knives. Will can walk in his dreams, and oh, I guess he can also be a wizard too when he wants to be. And the mute kid Joey can talk in the dream world. I don't even think Nancy gets a power. As you can tell, all these powers kind of totally suck. And also, they don't ever really affect Freddy at all. But It is a cool concept that the franchise will move forward with in more successful ways if I'm remembering correctly. Also, I remember thinking the powers in this movie were cool when I was 13, although now it was actually kind of a disappointing aspect of the movie. The real reason these powers don't work is because Freddy is just so fucking cool. Freddy has always been cool, but he's got some solid one-liners in this movie. My favorite has got to be when he kills one of the teens. It's this girl whose only real character trait we know about is that she wants to be an actress on TV. When she slips into her nightmare, Freddy literally transforms out of a TV, grabs her with his robot arms, and says, "Welcome to primetime, bitch," then smashes her head into the TV screen to kill her. That's comedy. The movie actually does that a lot. It takes the one character trait that each member of the ragtag squad has and somehow or another incorporates it into how they are killed. This may sound dumb, but it brings a dark, fun sense of irony into each kill, while making all the kills feel unique and showing off Freddy's sadist personality. The last positive I want to pour on this movie, and I could pour a lot more, but honestly you should just see it for yourself, is the effects and set design. There's one scene early on that blew me away. This is a movie from 1987, but the way they were able to blend practical effects, stop motion, and CGI is stunning. It's flawless. The way they are able to manipulate the set, particularly in this one dream sequence, was so impressive. Everything rarely looked fake. There's only one instance of full CGI garbage that I noticed, and it's not even needed. It's just these clacking desk balls that float away to show that they're in a dream. They look terrible. I don't know why that's the one thing they decided to make full CGI, but whatever. Everything else looks great. Even the really gory stuff. There are like these tendons in this guy's arms and legs that Freddy is using like puppet strings that was borderline too much. Made me very uncomfortable in the best way. Now, onto the stuff I didn't like so much. This is something that tends to happen in a lot of slasher sequels that unfortunately this movie does fall into the trap of. And that's over-explaining the villain. In the original movie, we find out that Freddy Kreuger was a child murderer who the parents of Elm Street murdered in a fire. Hence, why Freddy is haunting the Elm Street kids' dreams. Fairly simple, fairly unsettling. Overall, successful at delivering the intended effect of that backstory. This movie decides to add in a religious element and tell us that Freddy was always doomed to be an evil person because his conception was the result of a young nun being raped by 100 lunatics after she was accidentally locked in an asylum over the Christmas holiday. Okay, didn't need that. Then we are told the only way to stop Freddy is to put his mortal remains to rest. Okay, weird. So, in the process of doing that, Freddy can suddenly manipulate inanimate objects around his remains, and also he can control his skeleton to fight people. Welp, what the fuck? This doesn't even feel like the same movie. Freddy literally signs out of his fight with the Dream Warriors to go lay this skeletal smackdown. This 100% breaks the franchise's established rules. I don't know why they did this. And at the end, using holy water on his remains defeats him, not the Dream Warriors. Although Nancy does save the kids in the dream. But still, super weird angle to introduce into the movie, and it just overly complicated Freddy's existence. Nothing introduced here was necessary at all, but I guess I get it. They needed some way to try and defeat Freddy once and for all, and Nancy already tried bringing him to the real world to kill him in the original. So at least they tried something different, I guess? Also, turns out the nun who told the main doctor guy all of this was Freddy's mom, and she was a ghost the whole time for some reason. Okay? Weird backstory aside, I really like this movie. It's a stupid popcorn horror movie, but that's the fun of it. It's a great movie to watch with your friends over a couple of drinks, although I watched it totally alone and I still had a great time. I don't need anyone. Overall, I'd give A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors a 4 out of 5. I just want to take the time to thank you for watching this video and any other of our Halloween themed videos we've been putting up on the channel this month. Halloween is my favorite holiday, so it's been fun for me to tailor our videos to that theme for a while. But we're moving forward, and there will be a different series of reviews coming to this channel for all kinds of movies. So if you've enjoyed these horror reviews, I'd encourage you to stick around and see what else we've got coming out starting next month. Pressing that like button and subscribing would also really help us out. I also want to know what you think of Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Do you have a favorite film of the Elm Street franchise? Do you admit that Freddy is hotter than Scary Terry? And did you see the twist coming that I was a ghost this whole time? Let me know in the comments below. Happy Halloween, and until next time, that's about that.